Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06, and we're all fired up, ready to go, and taking you right to 9 o'clock, where we'll hand it over to Chris Plant on the Chris Plant Show. This is O'Connor and Company, and coming up, we've got a huge critter news story for you. We're going to talk to Ian Lovejoy, who's one big victories yesterday in Northern Virginia for the Republicans. Also, we'll let you know what happened with Rashida Tlaib yesterday, a censure vote that did not go her way. That's all coming up. That's a busy morning already, Julie Gunlock.
That's right.
It's been very busy covering everything coming out of Virginia, but we do shift gears now as we're joined by one of the commissioners of the FCC, Brendan Carr. And wait a minute, sir, I don't know what you heard in advance about the Critter News segment, but I promise you it will be within FCC guidelines.
I'm definitely wanting to stick around for that one, that's for sure.
Good. All right. But in the meantime, you remember when the Republicans had the majority on the FCC, Republican appointees, and they did away with net neutrality, and we were told it was going to make the sky fall. We were told that people would die in the streets because we didn't have net neutrality anymore. And, of course, that didn't happen. If anything, we had more choice and more options through Internet streaming and various digital outlets. Well, now the Biden administration is trying to, tell me what this is, this digital equity plan that they're putting forth, because it sounds to me like they're trying to reinvent net neutrality on steroids.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, look, you can put a through line between a number of policies that the Biden administration is putting in place, whether it is, jawboning social media companies to censor protected speech. Jim Jordan just put out a new report on that yesterday. That's frankly very disturbing, whether it's this return of net neutrality, which the FCC voted on last week, or this new plan that we're going to vote on next week. As you noted, President Biden has called on the FCC to implement a, quote, digital equity plan. And on its surface, you could say, okay, what does that really mean? But what it does is it would vest the FCC with new intrusive authorities over all Internet services and Internet infrastructure in this country, a set of authorities that, frankly, we have never had, at least not in the modern era. You'd have to go back to sort of the height of the New Deal era, sort of the Ma Bell telephone network, to come up with a analog for this regime. All services, all prices are going to be regulated by the FCC through this lens of equity. And where that goes, I don't think anybody can say.
Yeah, when Congress created the FCC, first of all, they didn't even know there would be an Internet. But secondly, they certainly never anticipated the administrative branch of government to have this kind of control that you lay out here. So can they even do this? This will be challenged, right?
Yeah, look, this goes back to 2 years ago when the infrastructure law was passed. That was a 1,000-plus page piece of legislation. Tucked in less than one page was a provision on digital equity. And you can read it as being sort of mostly aspirational, like, look, on a going forward basis, obviously Internet providers should not be discriminating on where they build out based on race and religion and things like that. Fine. There's a way to lawfully implement it. But what President Biden
They're taking that
has
as
done,
a mandate, huh? They're taking that as,
right,
I see.
Exactly. They've taken that one thing and they've sort of driven a Mack truck through it. And one thing that people need to remember is, we focus a lot on control of the White House, control of the Congress, but the administrative state, the FCC where I work, and the alphabet soup of agencies across D.C., they have been controlled entirely by Democrats for approaching 12 of the last 16 years, some of the most consequential years in terms of economic growth in this country. And the left, in their own judgment, is not happy with what they've seen, but rather than righting the ship, they're just going hard left. And so this is sort of a new progressive approach that, again, is going to vest the FCC with all sorts of authority. Just to put one point on it, it effectively is going to require Internet providers to comply with this, to collect the religion of their customers,
right,
their national origin, their ethnicity. Because of the sweep of it, they need to collect that information in some effort to try to come into compliance with this new law.
So this is really some scary stuff. It will allow this administrative state, which we have talked about on this show, the danger of the administrative state. But we've also talked about how these equity principles, which they trot out with word salad that sound so good, are then weaponized and really hurt people. This will allow the federal government to regulate every part of in every part of the internet, like termination terms, customer credit, account history. How will they, give me an example of how they will use this information that they are gathering on users?
Well, I think that's part of the problem is I don't even think the FCC itself really knows where this goes from here, but people can now file complaints at the FCC and say somehow they've been discriminated against. The sweeping part of this, one of the many, is that it doesn't even limit itself to sort of what we would conceive of as intentional, cognizant discrimination. It says that if you have no intent to discriminate, but we at the FCC look back years from now and say some protected group was disparately impacted by some decision that a business made, then you're liable for millions or billions in fines. So it's a totally unchecked authority to allow us to second guess. Frankly, I think the through line here as well has a lot to do with just a rejection of free market capitalism. It is all about central planning and control. And unfortunately, I think it's a little bit like, Bernie Sanders has taken over the FCC.
We're speaking with FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, and as we're talking about this whole digital equity power grab that the Biden administration is trying to implement with the vote next week, you lay it out here. It sounds to me like a big government, strong arm solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Have they laid out what is wrong right now that they're trying to fix?
No, this is what's funny. So we had a 2-year proceeding on this. We did what's called an NOI, an initial inquiry. We did a notice of proposed rulemaking, a second inquiry. We got tons and tons of comments. And what the draft order says itself is, after all of that, and after all that record, we have not found any real evidence of intentional discrimination in the broadband market, which is, why they've had to sort of shift gears and say, well, we're just not going to look at intentionality. We're going to look at, what was the effect of this regardless of intention. And frankly, if you look at broadband markets in this country right now, where it's built, where it's not, you can't simply look at an ISP and claim that they were discriminatory. The government has a huge role to play in here. We're sitting on spectrum at the FCC right now that providers could use to build out. The local and state governments give franchises to cable companies that delineate where they can build. So the idea that we can look at this heavily regulated market and, point some type of discrimination on them, it's really tough to comply. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this reads like a planning document drawn up in a faculty lounge of a Soviet studies department.
Really quickly, we know that these big businesses are all wrapped up in this DEI stuff, and you could go to any of these companies' websites and see the word equity 100 times. Have they come out against this, or are they intimidated, or have they sort of given lip service to this?
Well, I think industry was sort of hoping to cut a deal along the way, but those hopes were dashed. At the last minute, the Biden administration itself weighed in with a comment on the FCC telling us to go hard left. And so, FCC got its marching orders, and that's where we're going. So, I think industry my guess is the regulated components here are going to end up suing in court. And I think there's a really good argument that this goes far beyond the bipartisan statute that Congress passed.
But they've got the vote. It sounds like this is going to pass, do you think? Or is there something that people can do? Is there any sort of public comment time that people can actually have their voices heard before the vote?
Yeah, this is going to pass next week. The votes are there to do it. There may be some changes around the edges, which could be beneficial, I think. And so it's always important to make your voice heard. But then I think it's off to the courts from there. And I hope that at least the most extreme portions of this are clawed back.
All right. Well, thanks for alerting us to it. Brendan Carr from the FCC. How many more years do you have there on the commission?
I just got renominated actually by President Biden and confirmed by the Senate, so I'll be here for another 5-year term, which is great.
Oh, right. That's why you waited a little while before you came on the program again. You just want to keep your head down. I understand.
Now he's done. Now 5 years and that's
it. There's more truth there than you know.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Carr, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
It is 8:15. WMAL traffic and weather every time at 8:17.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Traffic and weather brought to you by Hadid Carpet Cleaning.
On the next Vince Colonnade Show, we have post-election analysis, and we are joined by Senators Ted Cruz and Tommy Tuberville. Join us 3 to 6 right here on WMAL.
It's Critter News time. And, finally, we found 3 Chinese illegal aliens that the Biden administration is happy to deport. Of course, I'm referring to Tian Tian, Mei Xiang, and Xiao Qiji.
Look at you.
The 3 pandas Headed back to China. In fact, they're on the road right now. They're en route to the airport where they will board a specially equipped FedEx jetliner with a giant panda on the side of it, and they'll be heading back to China. This
sad day for the D.C. area.
the pandas are always on it's a lease deal, no lease option to buy.
Right,
We
unlike Hong
rent
Kong.
them. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know who the happiest man in D.C. is about this whole
I
situation?
don't know.
Chris Plant.
Does he hate the pandas?
He hates the pandas.
Well, it is
absolutely hates the pandas.
That is odd. That is
Well,
odd. I
he's
don't know people who hate pandas.
He is an avowed anti-communist, and he takes it to its nth degree. He sees those pandas, and he thinks of Mao's murderous rampage through the.
Wow, that's quite a stretch. It is the age of the red panda now, Larry.
I love
your
pandas.
favorite.
Yeah, Rusty the red panda
Yes.
is my favorite animal at the zoo. We love the red pandas, the red pandas and the otters. So this is why I am sad about this, not because I want to see the pandas, because you've seen the pandas once, you've seen it
They're
1,000
cute,
times.
though. They
They're
roll
fine.
around.
They're stupid. But I loved that they were sort of a draw. They would take a lot of the people at the zoo off of the beaten path and away from the other places that I like to visit. So now that they won't have the pandas to look at, they're going to be bothering me.
Yes.
They're going to get in my way as I try to watch the otters.
Yes, it's all about you, Larry.
Well, it is O'Connor and Company.
Fair
So
enough.
that's
Fair enough.
my
Are we going to
perspective
talk
on
about
this.
the goat?
We will in a moment. Oh, you mean Tom Brady? Yeah, in a sec. But are we getting more Chinese pandas is the question.
I don't
Will
think
there
so.
be
They're
regular...
actually I think they're actually
It's
looking
done.
for
It's
a
over.
different thing to fill this. I mean, they build out quite a.
Oh
hole
yeah,
for these
it's like
pandas,
a
so
whole extravaganza.
I
Oh no,
don't-
these giant pandas have had it made here, and
Yeah.
now they're going back to Red China, where they're just going to be, living. They're gonna go to the way of the Uyghurs. Let's face it, we know how
Truly.
China treats
Yeah.
their people.
Yeah.
All right, well, goodbye China. Goodbye pandas. It's
Goodbye,
over.
pandas.
It's over. They're done. They're heading back. All right. Meanwhile, we want to thank our. Can we name this listener? A WMAL listener, Tanya. Alerted us yesterday. She was the first in line to vote in her polling place out at Jordan Springs Elementary School in Winchester. And as she was waiting, they were about to open the doors, and up walked a goat.
A really cute goat.
Super cute goat. Apparently, this is a normal thing in Winchester. The goats are just wandering around the elementary school.
There's been no follow-up. I hope this goat's okay.
Anyway, the poll workers are trying to open the door to let people in to vote, and the goat muscles his way in. He's dying to get in there. He's like, "Let me in. We got to get rid of Buddha. We got to get rid of Buddha
Yes.
because she's bad."
Oh dear.
Sorry,
I got
but
nothing. I got nothing.
We put these pictures out on our social media, Twitter yesterday, just so you could see. But it's fantastic that we are. Listen. What do we talk about on this show? We talk about politics. We talk about critters. That's it.
There's
nothing else.
Yep.
Sometimes Meghan Markle, but she generally falls under the critter category.
That's true. She definitely does.
And clearly this critter, this four-hooved beast, this goat was motivated and decided to go vote. So we were very excited to see this, and thank you to Tanya for sending it our way.
Very cute. We love critter news. It's my favorite part.
I do like our producer Heather Hunter put this out there on social media on Twitter, and she used the hashtag goat vote. I don't think, is that a thing now? The goat vote?
Well, apparently
Who got the
so.
goat vote?
I like that. I mean, does this really just Winchester? My parents lived near Winchester for a
Yeah.
while, and it is pretty rural. But I wish we had more story on this.
Yeah, I don't
goat.
think goats should be wandering around
I mean, but
just
this-
wreaking havoc
this
everywhere.
goat is very pretty. It doesn't.
It's a gorgeous goat.
Does it have a collar? It looks like it has a collar on.
So it's somebody's pet goat.
Yeah.
But should they be wandering around? I mean,
That's
it's
right.
like, are goats to Winchester
If Tanya's
like what
listening-
a squirrel is to D.C.?
If Tanya is listening, give us an update on the goat.
Yeah, we're worried about the
I'm
future
a little
of the
worried
goat.
about this goat.
Making sense of your world.
I agree with everything you're saying.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
My heart just breaks for what's going on.
Making sense of the news. Now,
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's time for a bit of a victory lap here, and boy, do we need one after what was mostly a pretty rough night for Republicans in Northern Virginia, but we've been trying to highlight the upside. Mike Chapman, reelected to the office of sheriff, and Buddha Biberai looks like going down as Commonwealth's attorney, and now Ian Lovejoy, winner of the 22nd District. Thanks for joining us. Sorry,
Happy
I got
to
a little
be here. Thanks for having me.
a little choked up there on this excitement. You won. You beat your Democrat rival for this open seat, and this was considered a toss-up and a nail-biter, but you won it going away. So, obviously, first of all, congratulations, Ian Lovejoy. But secondly, what made your campaign different than some of the other Republicans who didn't do quite as well?
Well, I know that we invested heavily in a strong ground game. We knocked over 25,000 doors. 7,000 of them was done personally by me. And I know a lot of people were out there knocking doors, but we were particularly happy with our ground game. We stayed laser focused on the issues that really mattered in House District 22. And I think that showed through. Our opponent really focused on lies and exaggeration and fear tactics. And we tried to stay really focused on the kitchen table issues that people were talking about at the doors, and were, very humbled that the voters responded to that and saw that and elected me as delegate.
What there's a lot of politicians today who are sort of edging away from some of the issues that I think are top of mind, like education and parents' rights. Tell me why you thought that was important to still talk about in this election.
Well, it was important, and it is still important, and I have no doubt that we did as well as we did because we kept those issues at the forefront. When you get a parent at the door, you can tell their thoughts and concerns about, when you're talking about education, you're talking literally about not only their children's futures, but the state's future and the nation's future. So those are always going to be issues that are front of mind. And, it's a huge role of government. I mean, most local and state governments spend greatly in our education system. And I think parents are starting to wake up and understand that how their tax dollars are being spent, and they want to make sure they're getting a great result for this investment we're making.
There's a lot of talk right now, Delegate-elect Ian Lovejoy. I like saying that. Have you heard that? That's pretty fun to hear, isn't it?
It's been mentioned, yeah.
There's a lot of talk, I bet. There's a lot of talk this morning about abortion. And I want to say you're one of the Republicans who did not ignore it. You didn't, choose not to talk about the issue. But you did it in such a way that I think was very smart, because you talked about finding consensus. And you talked about the fact, here's what I want to do. I want to expand adoption services and counseling. I want to support new mothers in need with pregnancy expenses. I want to require fathers to pay for child support to single mothers during the pregnancy. And you want to make exceptions for rape and incest and the life and health of the mother. But at the same time, we can find consensus on this issue at a 15-week limit. And you didn't allow the fear-mongering to take hold. I think there's a lesson to be learned there, because I think too many other Republicans just didn't want to talk about it at all.
Right.
Right. I mean, I think you have to we certainly have to stand up and counter their lies and their fear-mongering, and we knew that that's something we were going to have to do early in the campaign. And look, I think there is consensus to be found, and when you really talk to people, you move past one-question polls that don't really discuss the issue in depth. When you really have a conversation with people, the 15-week limitation with reasonable exceptions, it really resonated with folks when you could really have that conversation with them. And certainly it is more in alignment with the mainstream of where people are thinking now than where Democrats have been marching, which is the other direction. And so I think it was important to draw that line, and I'm certain that our victory lied heavily in really countering the lies of our opponent and the lies that the Democrats have been spewing. I mean, just turn on a television. Yeah. And I think that also when folks were turning on the TV and they were seeing cookie cutter ads that were identical about every Republican candidate, I think that, that dilutes their message. They knew that all they had was this cookie cutter 3 bullet point argument, and they made cookie cutter ads about every Republican. Yeah. And intuitively, people just know that can't be true. So we're really,
Yeah, but they worked. It looks like they worked, but we can listen. There's going to go ahead.
Obviously, we're really excited about our performance. We're watching around the state as well. But this is a state that wins 10 points for Joe Biden. We've clawed back a seat in the Senate, reduced the majority there. we're looking at probably a 51-49. That is not a blue wave. That is not a massive crushing mandate. That is just, frankly, the reality of how the districts were redrawn. Most seats landed squarely at their partisan lean. So we're very actually excited about the results. And we thought it was a nail biter going in, but, we're up 5%, 1,600 votes. It's decisive, so we couldn't be more happy.
So moving forward now, it looks like you're going to be joining a minority in the House of Delegates instead of majority. What's your priority going to be, and how are you going to face this new reality?
Well, I cut my teeth on a bipartisan city council that transitioned from Republican to Democrat during my tenure, so I know how to reach across the aisle and work on consensus on the important issues that residents of District 22 face. I will just remind everyone that a 51-49 majority is not a groundswell or, a decisive victory. And we still own the governorship. So I think everybody's going to have to get along to get anything done, to get anything passed. And thankfully, I've, thrived for years working towards consensus. So I'm excited to get started.
Ian Lovejoy, your new delegate-elect there in the 22nd District. Congratulations on your victory. One of the real bright spots from last night's elections in Virginia.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you so much. And I would just end with, we already have our constituent services website up and running. It's delegatelovejoy.com. It's fully functional. So if you're in HD22, check it out.
There you go. See, that's what you do.
Awesome.
You serve the voters. You
running.
serve the people. Thank you, Ian. Well, listen, this has been the go-to place leading up to yesterday's election in Virginia. We've covered those elections like no one else really anywhere in the media. And so it's only fitting that we wrap up this day after election with a bit more of a recap of what happened yesterday. Yes, the shorthand is Democrats not only hold control of the Senate in Virginia, but they also regained the majority in the House of Delegates. How did that happen? Why it happened? What can be done? That's certainly going to be discussed. We did plenty of it today, Julie Gunlock, and it will continue to be discussed for
we still hold the governorship, and
we still do hold the statewide races.
He is going to be there as a bulwark against some of the craziness the Democrats are going to propose.
By the way, Tara Durant leads Joel Griffin right now by 2 points in that Senate race. I think she's going to hold on to that one. That'll be another win for Republicans. And Bryce Reeves has won the 28th. That was a very tight one. And Richard Stewart won the 25th, also a tight one.
Yeah.
Other bright spots, and honestly, this may be the brightest spot of all. Bob Anderson, it appears, came out of nowhere with a barely funded campaign and defeated Buddha Bibarai in Loudoun County.
I'll take it.
Yes,
if that was the only bright spot, that's a big supernova bright spot.
It's huge. It really is. And not only is it great to end this woman's career who has been so destructive, but it's so good for the people of Loudoun County. A new Commonwealth's Attorney Bob Anderson partnered with re-elected Mike Chapman as sheriff.
Great.
Will absolutely change course with regard to law and order and crime in Loudoun County, and it came none too soon. Yesli Vega won re-election as a county supervisor in Prince William County. Pat Harity has kept his seat in the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, so that's good. Gary Higgins has won the 30th District House seat. That's very important, too. Bill Wolf sadly did not win against Danica Rome in that hotly contested Senate race.
But it was tight. It was tight.
It was super tight. Way tighter than anyone expected. And again, David and Goliath. Danica Rome had so many millions of dollars pumped in.
From California.
From
and
San
from
Francisco.
Texas liberals, Austin area millionaires. I mean, this was Danica Rome, and on the night where it was announced she won. What did she talk about? She talked about transportation. She talked about protecting the battlefields. No, she talked about trans kids and denying parents their rights as basic rights as parents. So there's Danica.
That's right.
So watch
Danica
her.
Rome. We've been telling you this for weeks. That Danica Rome's entire campaign was about traffic congestion and Manassas Battlefield and all of this stuff. And last night, all Danica Rome talked about was trans.
Yep.
That's
all she cares about.
That's what happens. Also, this is so depressing. Phyllis Randall kept her seat on the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors.
How?
I think, honestly, you want the answer because we had somebody run as an independent.
Yeah.
And that split the vote. Phyllis Randall is going to keep her seat after bilking the taxpayers of Loudoun County for a pleasure trip on the taxpayer dime out to various foreign countries and then lying about it.
Yep.
She won with 48% of the vote.
Yeah.
The anti-Phyllis Randall vote was split 43-8 between Gary Katz and Sam R. Independent. I don't even know what the person's name is.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is a problem, though, when you have independent candidates. It splits the anti-Phyllis Randall vote, and she eked by with 48% of the vote.
If without that independent, we possibly could have won.
That's correct.
So, too bad.
It's 8:52. All right, that's a wrap. Julie Gunlock, thanks for being by my side during all of this Virginia election hoopla. Joining us now is Chris Plant. Chris, Rashida Taliban, Congresswoman from representing the people of Gaza. She got sort of a wrist slap there.
Got a little bit of a wrist slap, yeah. We we may be losing the pandas, but we still have the squad on Capitol Hill. So who's more fun to watch, and who should more be in a cage?
I mentioned that you hate the pandas, and somebody tweeted at me, that can't be true. Chris Plant doesn't hate the pandas, but could you please confirm this? Because I'm not giving fake news.
I wouldn't use the word hate, but, like you, I like the red pandas better. They're more fun. They do things. The Chinese communist pandas came in, and they laid on a rock for 40 years, and now they're going back to